So I enjoy the Meg series as a literary guilty pleasure, and on numerous occasions I've called them stupid but fun. Now, I've reviewed all these books, and when I heard that they were making a movie, I was a little apprehensive. Frankly, I didn't think that they'd be able to really capture the spirit of the books, or they'd pull off some stupid plot. Well, frankly, when you come down to the bad casting, a lot of the bad scripting choices, so on and so forth, you're left with very little spirit from the books itself, and frankly, right here's the loyalty the movie has to the books. I experienced a lot of emotions when I saw the Meg the other day. I went in with very low expectations, as I do with a lot of movies of this caliber, and I was still, frankly, kind of disappointed, but kind of not. The movie had a very rough start, in my opinion, mostly because I really enjoyed the book, so of course I'm bringing up a lot of plot points and character moments that they missed out on or screwed up. Right off the bat, we see the main character, Jonas Taylor, as being this badass Navy diver saving trapped sailors in a nuclear submarine at the bottom of the ocean, and that right there is already a mistake. Sure, it looks good on the film, but Jonas Taylor was just a pilot. He drove submersibles, he didn't do deep sea water rescue operations. And then it got worse because he apparently witnessed something down deep below that helped cave in the side of the submarine so that it explodes, and his two best friends died inside the sub because they got trapped. This is an obvious parallel to the two scientists who died in Jonas Taylor's sub in the first chapter of the first book. I mean, you can do without it, but the problem is that opening just left such a bad taste in my mouth that I spent the first half hour very angry. And even though we don't get to see any kind of a megalodon, unlike what Jonas did in the book, and I guess in the movie, Jonas in the movie winds up as a professional drunk somewhere on the coast of Thailand. Not what he did in the book, in which he decided to study prehistoric animals and learn all about megalodons, which he witnessed. He didn't just give up so he could become a bum, he put his all into studying. Now, as an action movie trope, that kind of, it's okay, it's not great, it's been done several times before, but whatever. Oh, and that is not nearly the only change they made. The more characters they introduced, the more pissed off I got. For example, his wife, Terry Tanaka, not in the movie. Instead, we have someone named Shuyin playing the part, who I guess is supposed to be Terry's replacement. I guess Terry wasn't an Asian enough name or something. Now, I admit I did almost no research before going into this movie, because I want the movie to be able to explain everything to me so that I don't have to do research. And in the trailer, I originally thought that Jonas's wisecracking best friend, Mac, was played by this guy.
Did you guys ever watch Shark Week?
No, that turns out to be someone entirely new named Morris. He's the rich guy. Jonas's ex-wife Lori in the movie replaces his ex-wife in the book, Maggie. Lori is a submersible diver who apparently worked for Greenpeace. And Maggie is a complete and utter bitch who also worked as an investigative reporter. Let's see, DJ is no longer Asian, Heller is no longer a complete putz, and actually the entire genre was changed. You see, while the books were all thrillers, the movie is definitively an action piece. It's not the worst thing, but frankly, I think that loses a lot of the flavor from the books. There aren't really any thrills to be had here. There's some good action scenes. They managed to get the action right, especially the final action scene. That was actually fairly enjoyable. The problem is it doesn't capture the spirit of the books at all. It doesn't even try to. A lot of that, I think, stems from the fact that Jason Statham was cast as Jonas Taylor. And don't get me wrong, I love Statham. He's a great action star. Problem is, he's a lousy Jonas Taylor. See, in the books, Jonas is much more of a studious, unlikely hero kind of guy. In the movie, Statham plays him more as kind of an instant badass. And that kind of sums up my thoughts of the whole thing. While the movie itself isn't really bad as a movie, it is a garbage adaptation. Yes, you can expect a full review on that eventually. But even though the movie doesn't capture any of the spirit of the books, and it really pissed me off in the first 30 minutes, so much so that I was worried that I was going to spend the entire viewing time fuming, it actually does have a lot of good things going for it. Visually, the movie's pretty good. There's nothing especially captivating, but some underwater shots do look very pretty, and the megalodons, yeah, it's pretty creepy. I would be terrified to be in the water with that thing. The whole movie is basically Jaws on steroids, and frankly, it does capture the same plot as you've seen in who knows how many dozens of man versus nature action movies. You got this thing, it's living peacefully down in this one secluded section of the world, in this case the bottom of the ocean, underneath this weird fragment cloud of cold. Very badly explained. When humans go down, it disturbs it, and it allows the monster to escape into the surface, and it starts eating people. You've seen this plot dozens of times before. But the thing that really caught my attention, and frankly admiration, is how likable the characters were. I mean, it was weird because I spent the first chunk of the movie pissed off at how badly they mangled the characters and several sections of the plot. But the characters were so well written and interacted with each other so well, and they were so likable that I found myself really enjoying the movie because of them. The movie's even daring enough to fight against some common action movie tropes. For example, in how many of these movies do you have the rich investor asshole guy? He's greedy, he's a coward, he's the first one to run out of the area when danger hits. The rich guy in this movie's pretty cool, actually. Now, he doesn't especially go out of his way to save anybody, but he doesn't sit down and cower when the shark starts attacking the boat. And he actually is responsible for doing a lot of good. He is played with a bit of compassion, and he does seem like he's actually trying to connect with the other characters on a real human level. And I thought that was nice. That was very enjoyable. And several of the other characters worked in the lab together, and they all had inside jokes, they made fun of each other, they got along. It felt like they were actually friends. I mean, especially compared to common action tropes these days where characters who are not the main character are just there for either exposition or stupid puns. So, the movie actually does have a little bit going for it. Until you consider the science. Going back to the movie as an adaptation, one of the things that the books got right is the amount and the introduction of science. You get a real idea of the dangers of deep-sea dives. For example, the movie starts off by showing us the bottom of the Philippine Trench. And on the bottom of the Philippine Trench is an American nuclear submarine. The problem is, the bottom of the Philippine Trench is about 10,000 meters, and I think the movie includes that, don't quote me. But that's about 34,000 feet below seawater level, and at that depth, a fully sized sub will be crushed into the size of a soda can. Deepwater shit is ridiculous. You also have to consider the shape and size of the submersible that you use. For example, in the books, they all rely on spheres. You don't want to go in there with a canonical sub because the pressure won't be applied evenly, and eventually it'll section off in the middle and kind of squeeze the sub and break it in half that way. If you have a sphere, pressure's being applied evenly because you got the weight of all that water on top of you, and I don't even know how many atmospheres is at that depth. It's mind-boggling, frankly. But that's me being a nitpicky little bastard. I just enjoy deep-sea thrillers. They're terrifying. So if you're expecting scientific accuracy, and why would you in a modern-day action movie, then skip this movie. Otherwise, it's not that bad. The characters are definitely the strongest point. The plot's been done, but frankly, what plot hasn't? And while a lot of the flavor of the books has been lost, it's actually still a good time to be had if you let it. The book was definitely better, but the movie could be worse. Makes for a decent popcorn flick. At least it's better than the Zachary Wallace books.